The cold hits my face first. October wind, the kind that smells like wet leaves and gasoline. I cut through Maple Street because it shaves off 2 minutes from the walk home, and Mom gets weird if I am late on Wednesdays. That is when I see her. The woman sits on the bus stop bench, spine curved like a question mark. Her coat is the color of old newspapers, threadbare at the elbows, and her hands shake as they reach toward nothing, toward the empty road. Toward air, I stop walking. My sneakers scrape against cracked pavement. She is crying, not the loud kind. The kind that leaks out silent and steady, like a faucet someone forgot to tighten. Her lips move, shaping words I cannot hear over the traffic hum from 2 streets over. Her fingers curl and uncurl, grasping at something that is not there. My stomach twists, hard and sudden, like the time I saw a dog get hit by a car in front of the grocery store. That same feeling of wrongness, of the world tilting off its axis and nobody noticing but me. I should keep walking. I take 3 steps forward instead. The bus shelter smells like rust and piss. Someone spray-painted a crooked heart on the cracked plastic wall. The bench is metal, the kind that freezes your legs even through jeans. She does not seem to notice. Her focus is locked on the road, on the stretch of asphalt that curves past the bakery and disappears behind bare trees. She whispers again, louder this time. "Please!" The word cracks open in the space between us. Raw, desperate. My throat goes dry. I know I should not be here. Mom always says to mind my own business, that sticking your nose where it does not belong only leads to trouble. But there is something about the way this woman holds herself. Like she is made of glass and one wrong breath will shatter her completely. I clear my throat. She does not look at me. Her eyes stay fixed on the empty road. "Are you okay?" My voice comes out smaller than I want it to. Her hands drop to her lap, slowly, like they weigh 1,000 pounds each. She blinks, and for a second I think she might pretend I do not exist, that she will keep staring at nothing until I give up and leave. But then she turns her head. Her eyes are the color of fog, gray and distant and swimming with something I do not have a name for. She looks at me like she is seeing through me. Like I am the ghost, not whatever she was reaching for. "He is late," she says. Her voice is soft, polite, the kind of voice that belongs to grandmothers who bake cookies and remember your birthday. "Who?" I ask. "My son." She says it like it explains everything. Like those 2 words are a complete sentence, a full story with a beginning and middle and end. Her hands smooth the fabric of her coat, over and over. A rhythm that makes my skin prickle. "When is he supposed to get here?" 4 o'clock. She nods toward the faded bus schedule stapled to the shelter wall. Half the times are smudged illegible. "He always takes the 4 o'clock bus." I glance at the schedule, at the peeling paper and the routes that do not run anymore, have not run for years according to the big red stamp that says service discontinued. My pulse kicks up. "Maybe he missed it," I offer. "Maybe he will catch the next one." Her smile is gentle, sad, like she is the adult comforting me instead of the other way around. "Maybe," she whispers, but her hands start trembling again, worse than before, and she turns back to the road, back to watching the place where the asphalt bends and disappears. And I realize with a certainty that sinks like a stone in my gut that she does not believe it, that she will sit here until the sun goes down and the cold really sets in, waiting for a bus that is not coming and a son who is not on it. I do not know what to say. do not know how to fix the kind of broken I am looking at. So I sit down beside her. The metal bench bites through my jeans, cold enough to ache. She does not acknowledge me, just keeps her vigil, her breath misting in the autumn air, her spine bent under the weight of something I cannot see. Minutes pass, 3, 5, 7. A car drives by, then another. The wind picks up, scattering leaves across the sidewalk. Somewhere a dog barks. The world keeps moving, keeps spinning, and we sit in the cracked shelter like we are frozen outside of time. At 3:45, she straightens slightly. Anticipation flickers across her face. "Almost time," she murmurs. I watch the road with her. Watch the empty stretch of pavement and the shadows growing longer as the sun dips behind the buildings. My chest feels tight, like something is pressing down on my ribs. 3:50, 3:55, 4 o'clock. No bus comes, her breath hitches, just once. A tiny sound that I feel more than hear. Her hands grip the edge of the bench, knuckles white, and for a horrible moment I think she might collapse, might fold in on herself completely. But she does not. She just sits there, staring, waiting. "Maybe tomorrow," she says quietly. "Maybe tomorrow he will come." And I understand then, with a clarity that terrifies me, that she has said these exact words before. That she will say them again. That she has been sitting on this bench, reaching for empty air, whispering to ghosts, for longer than I can imagine. I stand up. My legs have gone numb from the cold. "I can walk you home," I say. "It is getting dark." She shakes her head, does not look at me. "Not yet, just a little longer. In case he is running late." Something in her voice makes my skin crawl. A certainty, a faith that should not exist. I leave her there. Walk away on legs that feel disconnected from my body. When I reach the corner, I look back. She is reaching toward the empty road again, whispering a name I still cannot hear. And I know, with the same awful certainty, that I will come back tomorrow. That I will not be able to stop myself. That whatever is waiting at that bus stop has already sunk its hooks into me. The sound of her voice follows me home. I keep hearing it, that thread of certainty when she said tomorrow, like the word itself was a rope she could climb out of whatever dark place she lived in. My sneakers scuff against the sidewalk, and the October wind pulls at my jacket, but I barely feel it. All I feel is the cold metal bench still pressing against my spine, the weight of her disappointment hanging in the empty air where a bus should have been. My mother is chopping carrots when I walk through the door. The knife hits the cutting board in sharp, rhythmic taps. I drop my backpack by the stairs and the thud makes her glance up. "You're late. Stayed after for math help." The lie tastes like copper. I have never been good at lying, and the way her eyes narrow tells me she knows it, but she only nods and returns to the carrots. Orange crescents pile up under her hands. I try to do my homework at the kitchen table while she cooks. My social studies textbook is open to a chapter about the Great Depression, black and white photographs of bread lines and hollow faces, but the words blur together. All I can see is the woman's threadbare coat, the way her fingers trembled when she smoothed her skirt, the precision of her posture, like sitting up straight could hold her together. "Set the table," my mother says. I move on autopilot. Fork on the left, knife and spoon on the right. I have done this 1,000 times, but tonight my hands feel clumsy, like they remember the weight of something they should not have touched. We eat in the kind of silence that hums with unspoken things. My mother made chicken and rice, comfort food that usually settles warm in my stomach, but tonight it sits heavy. I push grains around my plate and try to find the right words. "Mom!" She looks up. There are new lines around her eyes I have not noticed before, shadows that deepen when she is tired. She works 2 shifts at the hospital most weeks. Tired is her default. There's a woman who sits at the bus stop on Maple Street. The fork in her hand stops halfway to her mouth. For just a second, something flickers across her face. Recognition. Then her expression hardens into something I cannot read. "Eat your dinner." She was crying today. She sits there every afternoon and waits for a bus that doesn't come. I just thought maybe someone should. Stop. The word cuts clean through my sentence. My mother sets her fork down with too much care, the way you handle something breakable when you want to throw it. "You talked to her." The weight in her voice makes my throat tight. "I sat with her. She seemed alone." My mother closes her eyes. When she opens them again, there is something in them I have only seen a few times before. Once when I was 7 and ran into the street after a ball. Once when the phone rang at midnight and her sister was in the hospital. Fear, sharp and bright. "That woman," she says slowly, "is not your concern. But she's waiting for someone who never comes. Maybe we could." "No." My mother leans forward, and now her hand is on mine, pressing down against the table. Her palm is warm and rough from constant hand washing at work. "Listen to me. That woman is sad in a way you cannot help. Some people carry grief so heavy it would crush you if you got too close. You are 12 years old. You do not need to fix her." The words should make sense. They should be enough. But all I can think about is the way the woman stared down that empty road, waiting with a kind of faith I have never seen in church or anywhere else. "What happened to her?" My mother's jaw tightens. She knows. I can see it in the way her eyes dart away, in the way her shoulders draw up like she is bracing for impact. "It doesn't matter. It matters to her. That's exactly why you need to stay away." Her voice rises, just slightly, just enough to make my spine straighten. "This is not a game. This is not some project for you to feel good about yourself. That woman lives in a kind of pain you cannot understand. And if you go back there, if you make yourself part of her world, it will hurt you. Do you understand me?" I do not understand. Not really. But I nod anyway because my mother's fear is a living thing now, filling the space between us. She squeezes my hand once, then lets go. "Promise me you will not go back to that bus stop." The words stick in my throat. I want to promise. I want to be the good son who listens, who does not make his tired mother worry more than she already does. But the woman's voice is still echoing in my head. Tomorrow. Like tomorrow was a place she could walk to if she just waited long enough. "Okay," I say, another lie. This one tastes worse. We finish dinner in silence. I help wash the dishes, dry each plate and put it away in the cupboard. My mother kisses the top of my head before she goes upstairs to take a shower, and I smell the hospital on her clothes, antiseptic and exhaustion. I lie in bed that night and watch the shadows from the streetlight crawl across my ceiling. The house settles around me, creaking in its familiar way, but sleep will not come. Every time I close my eyes, I see the empty road, the bench, the woman's hands folded in her lap like prayer. My mother said to stay away, but what she did not say was louder. She did not say the woman was crazy. She did not say the woman was dangerous. She said the woman was sad and that I could not help. Maybe she is right. Probably she is right. But tomorrow at 3 o'clock, the woman will be at that bus stop again. Alone. Waiting for something that will never come. and I already know what I am going to do. The choice made itself the moment I sat down beside her. Maybe even before that. Maybe the moment I saw her reaching toward empty air and felt something in my chest crack open. I roll onto my side and stare at the clock on my nightstand. The red numbers glow in the dark. 9:47. 17 hours until 3 o'clock. I close my eyes and try to sleep, but all I can see is tomorrow. I take the long way to Maple Street, looping through the alley behind Henderson's grocery where Mom never shops. My backpack digs into my shoulders. Guilt sits heavier. The clock on the bank says 2:58. My heart hammers against my ribs like it wants out. I promised. I lied. I'm going anyway. The bus stop shelter comes into view. She's already there. Relief and dread tangle in my chest. Part of me hoped she wouldn't come. That yesterday was some singular moment of sadness I could forget. But she sits on the metal bench exactly as before, hands folded in her lap, spine straight despite the threadbare coat hanging loose on her frame. Waiting, I stop at the cracked sidewalk edge. Turn back, something whispers. Keep the promise, go home, but my feet move forward, 3 steps. 5, 10. She doesn't look up until my shadow falls across her lap. Her eyes are pale blue, like jeans washed too many times. They focus on me slowly, as if pulling themselves back from somewhere distant. Recognition flickers across her face, not of me specifically, of company, of another living soul acknowledging her existence. "Hello," she says. Her voice is soft, textured like old paper. "Hi," the word scrapes out. My throat feels tight. She studies me for a moment, then shifts slightly to one side of the bench. An invitation. The metal is cold through my jeans when I sit. October wind cuts through my jacket, and I wonder how she stands it in that thin coat. How long has she been sitting here? How long will she stay? Up close, she smells like lavender and dust. Like the sachets Grandma used to keep in her dresser drawers, mixed with something stale and closed off. The scent of rooms that don't get opened. Of air that doesn't circulate. We sit in silence. A car passes, tires hissing on damp asphalt. Somewhere a dog barks. The wind rattles the shelter's plastic panels. "It's cold today," I say, because the silence is pressing down on my chest and I need to puncture it. "Is it?" She tilts her head, considering. "I suppose it is." She doesn't seem bothered. Her hands remain folded, ungloved. The skin is thin, traced with veins like rivers on a map. I can see her knuckles, swollen and prominent. "Do you want my jacket?" I ask, already starting to shrug it off. "No, sweetheart. You keep it." Her hand touches my arm briefly. Her fingers are ice. "I won't be here much longer." My stomach clenches. "Where are you going?" "Home." She smiles, but it doesn't reach her eyes. "Once he arrives." The question sits on my tongue, burning. I swallow it again. It won't stay down. "Who are you waiting for?" Her gaze drifts from me to the empty road. The smile softens into something both painful and precious, like touching a bruise to remember it's real. "My son," she says. The simplicity of it stuns me. Not a friend, not a ride, her son. He comes home on the 4 o'clock bus. She says it like a fact, like the sun rising or rain falling. Certainty without question. I follow her gaze down the road. Empty, gray. The white line down the center is faded, cracked. No bus stop sign marks this shelter. I noticed that yesterday but didn't let myself think about it. "Every day?" I ask. "Every day," she nods. "He's very reliable, always has been." Even as a boy, he hated being late. Something cold that isn't wind crawls up my spine. I scan the shelter. No route number. No schedule behind the scratched plastic. No bench advertisement for law firms or hospitals. Just bare metal and cracked concrete and the smell of rust. Does he work nearby? I try to keep my voice normal, conversational. The way Mom talks to the neighbors. He's a teacher. Pride warms her words. 5th grade, he loves it. Says children are the only creatures honest enough to make life interesting. Her fingers clasp tighter together. He wanted to be a musician once, a pianist, but he was practical. Teaching was safer, steadier. That sounds nice, I say and mean it. He is nice. She turns to me again, and for a moment her eyes are completely clear, present. You'd like him, he'd like you. He always had time for curious children. The word curious makes me flinch. Is it that obvious? Can she see the questions stacking up inside me like books about to topple? What's his name? I ask. Daniel. The word is reverent. A prayer. Daniel James Hayes. She reaches into her coat pocket and pulls out a handkerchief. Embroidered flowers curl around the edges, yellow and faded. She doesn't cry, but she holds it like a talisman. I should have told him I was proud more often, she says quietly. You always think there's more time. The air feels thick. Wrong. I want to ask why she's here instead of at home. Why Daniel doesn't pick her up. Why this empty stretch of road with no bus sign? But the questions feel dangerous, like prodding a wound. I'm sure he knows, I offer. She smiles at me. It's the saddest expression I've ever seen. You're a kind boy. What's your name? I tell her. She repeats it carefully, like she's saving it somewhere safe. I'm Margaret Hayes, she says. It's nice to meet someone who sees me. The phrasing is strange. Someone who sees me. Not someone who sits with me or talks to me. Sees me. Mrs. Hayes, I start, then stop. What can I possibly ask that won't shatter whatever fragile thing is happening here? You can call me Margaret, she says. Margaret, I test it. It feels too familiar and exactly right. Does your son know you wait here every day? Her expression doesn't change, but something behind her eyes shifts. Shutters closing. He knows I'll always be here. She turns back to the road. A mother waits, that's what we do. The bank clock reads 3:22, 38 minutes until 4 o'clock, until the bus that has no route and no sign is supposed to arrive. Until Daniel James Hayes, 5th grade teacher who loves storms and plays piano badly, comes home. I should leave. Go home before Mom finishes her shift and finds me gone. But my legs won't move. Because Margaret Hayes sits alone on a freezing bench, waiting for a son with absolute faith, and something about that faith is both beautiful and utterly, terribly wrong. Can I wait with you? I ask. She reaches over and pats my hand. Her touch is gentle, grateful, cold as bone. I'd like that very much, Margaret says. The wind picks up, the shelter creaks. And together, we wait for a bus I'm starting to suspect will never come. The fluorescent lights in the public library hummed like wasps trapped behind glass. I pushed through the double doors at 2:45, telling myself I had plenty of time before 3 o'clock, before the bus stop, before Margaret. My sneakers squeaked against the linoleum as I walked past the circulation desk, past the rows of paperbacks, and the cluster of elementary kids sprawled on beanbags. The reference librarian barely glanced up when I mumbled something about needing the newspaper archives. She pointed toward a corridor I had never noticed before, narrow, and painted the color of old teeth. The archive room smelled like dust and machine oil. 3 bulky microfiche readers squatted on a long table, their screens dark and waiting. Filing cabinets line the walls, drawers labeled by year in faded typewriter font. I stood in the doorway, my palms already damp. I did not know what I was looking for, not exactly. But the wrongness from yesterday clung to me like spiderweb, impossible to brush away. The missing bus stop sign, the shelter with no routes posted, Margaret's voice when she said Daniel's name, so certain, so tender, so completely disconnected from the empty road in front of us. My mother's warning echoed, "Stay away from that woman." I pulled open the cabinet marked 2000 to 2009. The microfiche slides rattled in their plastic sleeves as I flipped through them, searching for something I could not name. My hands moved faster, clumsier. I did not know when Daniel was supposed to have left. Yesterday? Last week? Margaret had never said. She spoke about him like he existed in some eternal present tense, always coming home, always on his way. I loaded a slide into the machine. The screen flickered to life, bathing my face in cold blue light. Pages of newsprint bloomed across the glass, headlines about city council meetings and high school football scores. Nothing. I tried another year, then another. By the time I reached 2006, my neck ached and my eyes burned. The clock on the wall read 3:02. I should leave. Margaret would be at the bus stop already, settling onto the cold bench, arranging her purse in her lap with those careful, ritualistic movements. But my fingers were already sliding the next cartridge into place. The date at the top of the page read October 9th, 2007. A Tuesday. The headline in the bottom right corner was small, almost modest. The kind of tragedy that only gets 4 column inches because it happened to ordinary people nobody famous. Local teacher dies in highway accident. My breath stopped. The photograph beside the text showed a man in his late 20s, maybe early 30s. He had Margaret's eyes, pale and gentle. His smile was the kind that made you want to smile back, lopsided and genuine. He wore a tie decorated with little cartoon atoms, the sort of thing a science teacher might pick to make his students laugh. My hands found the mouse. The scroll wheel clicked under my thumb as I magnified the image, bringing the text into focus. The words swam, then sharpened. Daniel Marcus Hayes, age 28, a 5th grade teacher at Riverside Elementary, was killed instantly when a drunk driver crossed the median on Route 74 Sunday evening. Hayes was traveling north, returning home to celebrate his mother's birthday. He is survived by his mother, Margaret Hayes, of Maple Street. The screen's glow turned everything in the room corpse blue. I read the paragraph again, then again. The letters did not change. Age 28, 2007. I counted backward in my head, my pulse hammering in my ears. 18 years ago, not yesterday, not last month. 18 years since Daniel Hayes drove north on Route 74 and never arrived. 18 years since Margaret Hayes had a reason to wait at that bus stop. My chair scraped backward, too loud in the silent room. I stood, then sat again, my legs unsteady. The photograph stared out from the screen, Daniel's smile frozen in time, forever 28, forever driving toward a birthday party he would never reach. I thought of Margaret's hands smoothing her coat, the way she checked her watch, the absolute certainty in her voice. He comes home on the 4 o'clock bus. My stomach twisted. I should not have looked. I should have listened to my mother, should have walked past the bus stop every day without stopping, without asking questions, without sitting on that cold metal bench and pretending to wait for something that would never come. But now I knew, and knowing changed everything. I zoomed in on the article again, searching for details I had missed. There, in the final line, funeral services will be held Thursday at St. Mark's Chapel. In lieu of flowers, donations may be made to the scholarship fund established in Hayes's name. No mention of a father, no siblings, just Margaret listed alone in that terrible phrase, "He is survived by." I clicked to the next page of the newspaper, then the next, hunting for a follow-up article. There, 3 days later, a small piece about the funeral, well attended. Students from Riverside Elementary released balloons. Margaret Hayes, supported by friends, did not speak. My eyes caught on a detail in the photograph accompanying the article. It showed the crowd outside the chapel, heads bowed. In the background, barely visible, a woman in a dark coat stood apart from everyone else, her face turned toward the street, toward the road. Even then, she had been waiting. The clock read 3:38. I had 22 minutes before the 4 o'clock bus that did not exist and had never existed. The bus that Margaret Hayes had been waiting for every single day for 18 years. I ejected the microfiche with shaking hands. The slide clattered onto the table. When I tried to return it to its sleeve, I missed twice, my fingers numb and clumsy. The walk back through the library felt endless. The beanbag kids were laughing about something. The reference librarian stamped books with rhythmic, unbothered thuds. Everything was exactly as I had left it, ordinary and solid and real. But I was not the same person who had walked in an hour ago. I pushed through the double doors into the gray afternoon. The October air bit at my face, sharp and clean, nothing like the stale, recycled cold of the archive room. Maple Street was 6 blocks north. If I ran, I could make it. Margaret would be there already, waiting. The way she had waited yesterday and the day before and every day for 18 years, perched on that bench in her threadbare coat, watching an empty road for a son who had been dead since before I was born. I started walking, then running. My backpack slammed against my spine with every step. I did not know what I would say to her. I did not know if I should say anything at all. But the question that burned brightest, the one that made my chest ache and my eyes sting, was not about Daniel. It was about Margaret. If she had been waiting this long, through 18 winters and 18 autumns, watching for a bus that never came, then what exactly was she waiting for? I hit Maple Street at 3:47, lungs burning. The cold air scraped my throat raw with each breath. My backpack slammed against my spine as I ran, the zipper still open from when I shoved my notebook inside at the library checkout desk. Somewhere behind me, a car horn blared. I didn't look back. The bus stop came into view. Empty bench, cracked plastic shelter, no Margaret yet. I slowed to a walk, pressing my palm against the stitch in my side. My shoes scuffed the sidewalk. Each step felt too loud in the afternoon quiet. What was I even going to say to her? The newspaper photograph burned behind my eyelids. Daniel Marcus Hayes, 25 years old, beloved son. The words had been so small, compressed into 2 columns beside an advertisement for winter tires. 18 years ago, someone had printed those words, and Margaret Hayes had read them, and the world had kept spinning anyway. I reached the bench and sat. The metal froze through my jeans immediately. 3:50. 10 minutes until the 4 o'clock bus that didn't exist. 10 minutes until she would arrive and settle onto this bench and stare down the empty road with those clouded eyes, waiting for a son who had been dead since I was negative 6 years old. My stomach twisted. I shouldn't have come. What did I think I could do with this information? Tell her I knew. Tell her I was sorry. Sorry for what? For discovering her grief had an expiration date that had expired over a decade ago. "You're here early." I jerked around. An old man stood behind the bench, leaning on a wooden cane. He wore a cardigan that had seen better years, patches at both elbows. His face was weathered, carved with lines that suggested he smiled often but wasn't smiling now. "I've seen you," he continued, lowering himself onto the opposite end of the bench with a soft grunt. "Sitting with Margaret. That's kind of you." I didn't know what to say, so I said nothing. He studied me with sharp brown eyes. "You know about her son." It wasn't a question. Heat flooded my face anyway. "I saw you at the library," he said. "Through the window." You had that look people get when they find out. He tapped his cane against the sidewalk twice. "My name's Arthur Castellanos. I've lived on this street for 42 years. I was here the day Daniel died." The way he said it made my mouth go dry. Not the day Daniel died. The day. Like there was only one day that mattered, one point where time had split in two. "He was coming home to surprise her," Arthur said. His voice was quiet but steady. "Her birthday, October 9th. He'd called me that morning, asked me to keep her distracted so she wouldn't notice him pulling up. Said he had flowers in the car, pink roses, her favorites." I watched his hands tighten on the cane head. "He never made it off the highway. Drunk driver crossed the median at mile marker 73, head-on collision." Arthur's jaw worked. "They said Daniel died instantly. The other driver walked away with a concussion." Something cold slithered down my spine. "Margaret was waiting in the living room," Arthur continued. "I was with her. We were drinking tea. At 4:15, she said it was strange he was late. He was never late. At 5, she called his cell phone. It went to voicemail." He paused. "At 6:30, the police knocked on her door." I couldn't breathe. The air felt too thick. "She hasn't celebrated her birthday since," Arthur said. "Not once in 18 years. Won't let anyone mention it. Won't acknowledge the date. Last year I tried to bring her a card. She wouldn't open the door." The bus stop felt smaller suddenly, the shelter walls closing in. I thought of Margaret's threadbare coat, her trembling hands, the way she whispered to empty air. "Why does she come here?" The words scraped out of me. "Why this bus stop?" Arthur looked at me for a long moment. "Because this is where she would have picked him up," he said finally. "If he'd taken the bus instead of driving. If he'd listened when she told him the weather was bad. If he'd been running late and missed his car. All the ifs that keep us awake at night." He stood slowly, his knees cracking. "She thinks if she waits long enough, one of those ifs will come true." He walked away before I could respond, his cane tapping a steady rhythm against the concrete. I sat alone on the cold bench and watched the shadows lengthen. At 3:58, Margaret appeared at the corner. She moved slowly, one hand trailing along the fence for balance. Her coat looked even thinner in the October light. When she reached the bench, she settled beside me with a soft sigh, and I caught the scent of lavender and something else underneath. Something stale and sad. She didn't look at me. Her gaze fixed on the empty road the same way it always did. But I looked at her, really looked. at the way her fingers knotted together in her lap, at the way her shoulders curved inward, like she was trying to make herself smaller, at the fine tremor in her hands that never stopped. 18 years. 18 years of sitting on this bench. 18 years of watching buses that didn't stop. 18 years of waiting for a son who would never walk down that road with pink roses and an apologetic smile for being late. My chest ached. "He loved thunderstorms," Margaret said suddenly. Her voice was soft, distant. Even as a little boy, he'd stand at the window and count the seconds between lightning and thunder, calculating the distance. He always wanted to understand how things worked. I swallowed hard. Yeah, he would have been a wonderful father. She turned to me then, and her eyes were clear for just a moment, devastatingly clear. He would have been 43 this year. Can you imagine my baby 43? I couldn't speak. My throat had closed completely. She reached over and patted my hand, her skin paper-thin and cold. "You're a good boy," she said. "Sitting with an old woman, your mother raised you right." At 4 o'clock, a sedan drove past, not a bus. It had never been a bus. Margaret watched it disappear down the road. Then she sighed and stood, smoothing her coat with shaking hands. "Tomorrow," she said. "He'll come tomorrow." She walked away, her steps unsteady. I stayed on the bench as the sky darkened and the cold seeped deeper into my bones. I thought about birthdays that would never be celebrated, about pink roses rotting in a crashed car, about a mother who had rewound time so many times the tape had worn thin. Grief has no expiration date, Arthur had said. No, it doesn't expire. It just becomes the air you breathe. When I finally stood, my legs had gone numb. I walked home slowly, but I knew with absolute certainty that tomorrow at 3 o'clock, I would be back. Because someone needed to remember that Daniel Hayes had loved thunderstorms and would have been a wonderful father. Someone needed to sit with Margaret Hayes while she waited for a bus that would never come. And maybe, I thought as I turned onto my own street, maybe that was enough. But the question that followed me through my front door and up the stairs to my room wasn't about what I could do for her. It was about what she would do when she realized I knew the truth. I raided my mother's kitchen before she woke the next morning. The blue thermos sat in the back of the cabinet, the one she used for road trips when I was younger. I filled it with chamomile tea and watched steam curl against the rim. My hands fumbled with the lid. I was 12 years old and had no idea what I was doing, only that I had to go back. At 2:55, I walked to the bus stop. The metal bench gleamed cold under weak afternoon sun. Empty. My stomach dropped. Maybe Arthur had been wrong. Maybe she had finally stopped coming. Maybe knowing someone else knew her secret had driven her away. Then I saw her. Turning the corner from Elm Street, slow and careful, one hand trailing along the brick wall of the corner store for balance. The threadbare coat hung loose on her frame. She moved like someone walking through deep water. I stood. She saw me and stopped. For 3 long seconds, we looked at each other across 20 feet of cracked sidewalk. I lifted the thermos. Her eyes, pale and clouded, tracked the movement. Something in her face shifted. Not quite a smile. Something older and sadder than that. She walked to the bench and lowered herself beside me. The metal groaned. I unscrewed the thermos cap and poured tea into it. Steam rose between us, smelling of honey and flowers. I held it out. She took it with both hands. Her fingers were papery and thin, knuckles swollen. She brought the cup to her lips and sipped. Her eyes closed. "Chamomile," she said. Daniel loved chamomile tea. My throat tightened. Did he, every night before bed, said it helped him sleep. She took another sip and her hands stopped shaking. He had terrible insomnia as a boy. I would sit on the edge of his bed and read to him until the cup was empty. I poured myself a capful and drank. It tasted like forgiveness. "What did you read?" I asked. "Oh, everything. Treasure Island, The Hobbit. He loved stories about adventures he would never take." She stared at the empty road. But he was an adventurer in his own way. He taught 4th grade. Every September was a new journey with 25 new faces. The wind picked up, scattering dry leaves across the asphalt. Somewhere behind us, a car door slammed. "He sounds kind," I said. "He was." Her voice went soft. "Too kind, maybe. He always wanted to fix things. Broken clocks, broken people." She paused. "He could never fix his own loneliness." I did not know what to say to that, so I poured her more tea. She accepted it like communion. And then she started to talk. She told me about the summer Daniel was 7 and chased fireflies until midnight, collecting them in a mason jar that glowed green beside his bed. How he cried in the morning when he found them dead and made her help him bury each one with a popsicle stick cross. She told me about the time he broke his arm falling from the oak tree in their old backyard, and how he had laughed through his tears because the X-ray looked like a crooked lightning bolt. "He loved storms," she said, and her face transformed. Grief peeled back to reveal something luminous underneath. Thunderstorms especially. When other children ran inside, he would stand in the rain with his arms spread wide, daring the lightning to find him. "Was he afraid of anything?" I asked. She thought for a long moment. "Silence. He hated silence. That is why he played piano. He was good at it." Her laugh surprised us both. It cracked out of her like something long buried breaking through soil. Terrible, absolutely dreadful, but he played like it did not matter. He would pound out these horrible approximations of Beethoven and grin at me like he had just performed at Carnegie Hall. I could see it. The image built itself in my mind from her words. A man with gentle eyes and clumsy hands, filling an apartment with joyful noise. "I have not heard that piano in so long," she whispered. The luminous thing vanished. Grief closed back over her face like water over a stone. I wanted to ask why she did not play it herself, but the answer sat heavy between us. Some instruments become tombstones. The days blurred into ritual. 3 o'clock. The thermos. The bench. She was always there, and so was I. My mother stopped asking where I went after school. Maybe she knew. Maybe she understood that some lessons do not come from teachers. Margaret told me about Daniel's disastrous attempts at gardening, how every plant he touched withered except for one stubborn cactus that bloomed once, a single red flower that lasted 3 days. She told me about the time he brought home a stray dog missing one ear, and how they kept it until the real owner was found, and how Daniel cried harder giving that dog back than he had at his father's funeral. "He felt too much," she said one afternoon. Gray clouds massed overhead. The air tasted like metal. That was his gift and his curse. He could not walk past suffering. He had to stop. He had to help. "That is not a curse," I said. She looked at me then, really looked at me, and her eyes were ancient. "No," she agreed quietly. "I suppose it is not." Thunder rolled in the distance. Margaret tilted her head back and closed her eyes. "He would have loved this," she murmured. The rain started. Cold drops that hit the cracked plastic shelter above us with sharp taps. I moved to stand to suggest we find cover, but Margaret caught my wrist. "Wait," she said. "Just a moment." So we sat together in the rain's percussion, and I understood that I was no longer just a boy at a bus stop. I was a witness, a keeper. Every story she gave me, I locked away in the vault of my memory where it could not fade or die. Daniel Hayes, who loved storms and played piano badly and felt too much. Daniel Hayes, who existed now only in his mother's voice and my listening. The 4 o'clock bus never came down Maple Street. It never had, not for 18 years. But we waited anyway, Margaret and I, bound by tea and story and the weight of a name I carried now like a second heartbeat. When the rain stopped, Margaret stood, slower than usual. She swayed and I reached out to steady her. "Thank you," she said. Her voice sounded thinner, stretched. "Same time tomorrow?" I asked. She nodded, but as she turned to leave, something rattled in her chest, a small sound, wet and wrong. She pressed a hand to her ribs and walked away. I watched until she disappeared around the corner, and the thermos grew cold in my hands. The cough started on a Wednesday, not the polite clearing throat kind. This one came from somewhere deep, rattling in her chest like rocks tumbling down a well. Margaret pressed her fist against her sternum and the sound stopped, but her knuckles stayed white against the threadbare wool of her coat. "Just the cold," she said before I could ask. She reached for the thermos I'd brought, chamomile with honey the way she liked it. Her fingers trembled. The metal cap slipped once, twice, before she managed to unscrew it. I watched the tea slosh against the rim as she lifted it to her lips. A single drop escaped, tracing a dark line down her chin. She didn't seem to notice. "Daniel hated autumn," she said, her voice rough at the edges. "All those dying things. He preferred spring when everything insisted on coming back." She smiled, but her eyes stayed fixed on the empty road. "I used to tell him that's what made fall beautiful. The courage to let go." The words sat between us like stones. I wanted to tell her she didn't need to let go of anything, that I would keep bringing tea, that I would remember every story. But my throat closed around the promise. By Friday, the tremor in her hands had spread to her shoulders. She clutched the thermos with both palms, steadying it against her chest between sips. When the 4 o'clock bus failed to arrive, she stood more slowly than usual, gripping the edge of the shelter until her balance returned. "Tomorrow," she said, like she was reminding herself. I nodded. Tomorrow, always tomorrow. Monday brought rain, cold and thin, needling through my jacket as I walked to the bus stop. Margaret was already there, hunched forward on the bench with her coat collar pulled high. Water beaded on the plastic shelter roof, drumming an uneven rhythm that made my teeth ache. She didn't look up when I sat down. "Margaret?" Her breathing came in shallow gasps, each one catching halfway. The cough erupted without warning, shaking her entire frame. She doubled over, one hand braced against the bench, the other covering her mouth. When it finally stopped, she lowered her hand slowly. Her palm glistened red in the gray light. Blood. "It's nothing." She pulled a tissue from her pocket, crumpled and already stained. "Old bodies betray us in small ways." My hands wouldn't steady as I poured the tea. The cup rattled against the thermos cap. She took it anyway, wrapping her fingers around the warmth like it could hold her together. We sat in silence broken only by rain and her labored breathing. The empty road stretched before us, slick and dark. No headlights appeared. No engine sounds carried through the wet air. At 4:15, she stood without a word and walked away. Her footsteps were uneven, each one placed with visible effort. I watched until she turned the corner, then sat alone on the cold bench, listening to my own heartbeat thunder in my ears. Tuesday, I arrived early, 2:45. The bench was empty. I sat and watched the minutes tick by on my phone's screen. 3 o'clock, 3:15, 3:30, she didn't come. Panic tasted like copper. It flooded my mouth, metallic and sharp, making it hard to swallow. Something was wrong. Something had happened while I was at school, memorizing state capitals and pretending to care about long division, and she was alone, coughing blood into tissues in some empty apartment. I didn't know where she lived. The realization hit like a fist to the chest. 3 weeks of daily meetings, countless stories, and I didn't know her address. Didn't know her phone number. Didn't know anything except her name and that her son had died 15 years ago on a highway. Margaret Hayes. The library archives had listed her as a widow. There had been a street name in the article, buried in the details about the funeral service. I ran. The library was 12 blocks away. My lungs burned by block 7. A stitch carved itself into my side by block 9. I didn't slow down. The librarian barely glanced up as I burst through the doors, rain dripping from my hair, and threw myself into the chair by the microfiche machine. My fingers were clumsy on the controls, scrolling too fast through dates until I found it again. There. Survived by his mother, Margaret Hayes, of 27 Sycamore Lane. I was already moving before the screen went dark. Sycamore Lane sat 3 streets over from Maple, a quiet row of brick apartment buildings with flower boxes gone brown in the autumn cold. Number 27 squatted at the end, its windows dark except for one on the 2nd floor. My finger shook as I pressed the buzzer for apartment 2B nothing. I pressed again, longer this time. Please, please answer. The intercom crackled. Hello? Her voice sounded like broken glass, sharp and fragile. It's me. My own voice came out strangled. From the bus stop. Silence stretched so long I thought she'd left. Then the lock buzzed. The stairwell smelled like old carpet and boiled vegetables. I took the steps 2 at a time, my wet shoes squeaking against linoleum. Apartment 2B sat at the end of the hall, its door already open a crack. I pushed it wider. Margaret stood in the doorway, one hand braced against the frame. Her face was the color of old paper, gray-white and thin enough to see the blue veins beneath. The same threadbare coat hung from her shoulders, but underneath I could see flannel pajamas, faded flowers on pink fabric. She looked at me with eyes that held something close to fear. You shouldn't have come. You didn't come to the bus stop. The words tumbled out too fast. I thought something happened. I thought, I'm tired. She said it simply, like tired was just another word for dying. Just tired. We stood there, her in the doorway and me in the hall, while something unspoken passed between us. The admission. The truth we'd both been pretending didn't exist. Tomorrow, she finally said. Her hand slipped from the doorframe. I promise, tomorrow I'll be there. The door started to close. Margaret, tomorrow. The lock clicked into place. I stood alone in the hallway, staring at the peeling paint on her door, listening to the shuffle of her footsteps retreating deeper into the apartment. A cough erupted, muffled by walls and distance, and didn't stop for a long time. I pressed my palm against the door. The wood was cold. She'd promised tomorrow, but tomorrow felt like a lie we were both pretending to believe. I arrived at the bus stop at 2:45. The sky hung low and gray, pressing down on Maple Street like a lid on a pot about to boil over. The metal bench felt colder than usual beneath my jeans, cold enough to leach through denim and into bone. She came at 2:53. I heard the shuffle of her shoes on concrete before I saw her, slower than before, each step deliberate, like she was negotiating with gravity. When Margaret rounded the corner, my throat tightened. The threadbare coat hung looser on her frame, swallowing her shoulders. Her face had the translucent quality of wax paper held up to light. But she had come. She had kept her promise. "Hello, dear," she said, lowering herself onto the bench with careful precision. The movement took longer than it should have. Her breathing came shallow and quick, fog blooming in short bursts from her lips. "Hi." I unscrewed the thermos cap, but my hands shook and tea sloshed over the rim, burning my thumb. I didn't say anything about how scared I'd been. How I'd lain awake last night imagining her apartment door unanswered forever. She wrapped both hands around the cup I gave her, like she was holding something sacred. Steam rose between us, smelling of chamomile and honey. "You didn't have to come," I said quietly. "If you're not feeling well, I mean." Her eyes found mine. Clouded, yes, but something shifted behind them. Something sharp and present that hadn't been there before. "I had to," she said. "There are things I need to say." My stomach dropped. The way she said it sounded like goodbye. We sat in silence for a while. A car passed, tires hissing on damp asphalt. Somewhere down the street, a dog barked twice and went quiet. The 4 o'clock bus would come in an hour and 7 minutes. It always did. It would rumble past without stopping, and Margaret would watch it go, and we would wait for a ghost. Except today felt different. Today Margaret wasn't watching the road. She was watching me. "You've been very kind," she said. Her voice had a steadiness I hadn't heard before, each word placed with intention. "Coming here every day, listening to an old woman tell stories about a boy you never met." "I don't mind," I said quickly. "I like the stories. About Daniel and the thunderstorms and the piano, and you went to the library." The words landed between us like a stone dropped into still water. My face went hot. It's all right." She took a sip of tea, her hands trembling only slightly. "I wondered if you would. You're a curious child. Curious children ask questions, and when questions don't have answers, they go looking." I couldn't breathe properly. The air felt too thick. "You think I do not know," she said quietly. The street sounds faded. The gray sky pressed closer. "Know what?" My voice came out small. She turned to face me fully. The clarity in her gaze was almost frightening, like fog burning off a lake to reveal deep water underneath. "That my boy is gone." The world tilted. I gripped the edge of the bench. "Mrs. Hayes, but a mother knows." She said it simply, like stating the color of the sky. "I have known for 15 years. I knew the moment the police officers came to my door. I knew when they told me about the drunk driver and the median and the hospital where they could not save him. I knew at the funeral when they lowered his casket into the ground." Tears burned hot behind my eyes. "Then why do I come here?" She looked out at the empty road, and for a moment the sharpness wavered. "Because I am not waiting for him to arrive, dear child. I am waiting for permission to leave." The words cracked something open inside my chest. I understood and didn't understand at the same time, the way you understand a nightmare while you're still dreaming it. Permission from who? From him. Her voice softened. From myself, from whatever decides these things. She paused, the silence stretching long enough for 3 cars to pass. When someone you love dies, a part of you refuses to move forward. It plants roots in the moment before you knew. Every day I come here, I am going back to the last time I waited for Daniel when he was still alive. The last time hope was possible. A woman walked by with a stroller. The baby inside was crying, a thin wail that faded as they moved down the sidewalk. Margaret watched them go. I used to wait here when he was coming home from university, she continued. Every holiday, every break, I would sit on this bench at 3 o'clock and wait for the 4 o'clock bus. He would see me through the window, and his face would light up like sunrise. Her hand found mine. Her skin felt papery and cool, but her grip was firm. I know he will never get off that bus. I know no amount of waiting will bring him back. But this bench, this hour, this place, it is the only spot in the world where he is still coming home, where the phone has not yet rung with the terrible news, where I am still a mother waiting for her son, and that is all I am. Not a widow, not a woman buried under 15 years of silence and ghosts, just a mother, waiting. The tears spilled over. I couldn't stop them. They ran hot down my face, dripping off my jaw onto my jacket. I didn't know, I whispered. How could you? She squeezed my hand. You are 12 years old. You should be thinking about homework and friends and whatever it is 12-year-old boys think about, not keeping vigil with a dying woman. You're not. I am. She said it without fear, without sadness, just fact. My body is giving up piece by piece. I have known it for months. The cough is not just a cough. The gray sky seemed to grow darker. A gust of wind scattered dead leaves across the pavement, scraping and skittering like tiny claws. Why are you telling me this? She looked at me with something like tenderness, something like pride. Because you deserve to understand. Because you have sat with me in my grief without asking me to explain it or fix it or move past it. You have given me something I have not had in 15 years. What? Companionship in the waiting. Her thumb rubbed across my knuckles, back and forth, a gesture so maternal it hurt. And because tomorrow may be different. I feel it in my bones, the way you feel a storm coming. Something is shifting. Something is ready to break. The 4 o'clock bus appeared at the far end of the street, a distant shape growing larger. Margaret turned toward it, and I saw her face change. The sharpness remained, but underneath it something else. Something like readiness. The bus slowed as it approached. For one wild, impossible moment, I thought it might actually stop. That the doors would hiss open, and a man with Daniel's face would step out, alive and whole, and this nightmare of grief and waiting would finally end. But it didn't stop. It rolled past, engine rumbling, windows full of tired faces that did not look our way. Margaret watched it go without tears. Tomorrow, she said softly, I think I will bring my good dress, and perhaps a small bag just in case. In case of what? She smiled, but her eyes were far away, fixed on something I could not see. In case permission finally comes. I walk to the bus stop early, before the school dismissal bell stops echoing in my chest. The sky hangs low and gray, the kind of October afternoon that smells like wet leaves and cold metal. My hands shake as I round the corner onto Maple Street. She is already there. Margaret sits on the bench in a navy blue dress with white buttons down the front, the fabric pressed smooth and stiff like it has not been worn in years. A small brown suitcase rests at her feet, the leather cracked but polished. Her hair is combed back from her face. Her hands, folded in her lap, do not tremble. She looks like someone waiting for a train that will actually come. My throat closes. I force my legs forward until I reach the shelter. The cold bench bites through my jeans as I sit beside her. She does not turn. Her gaze stays fixed on the empty road, but her mouth curves into something that might be a smile. "You are early," she says. "So are you." The words hang between us, heavier than they should be. A gust of wind rattles the shelter's plastic panels. Dead leaves skitter across the pavement like scattered thoughts. "I wanted time," she says quietly, "to sit here while it is still mine." I do not know what to say to that. My chest aches. I stare at the suitcase, at the way her shoes are shined black, at the silver brooch pinned above her heart in the shape of a bird. Everything about her is deliberate, prepared. "Are you going somewhere?" The question sounds stupid the moment it leaves my mouth. Her smile deepens, softens. "I suppose I am." A car passes, tires hissing on damp asphalt. The sound fades. The silence that replaces it feels enormous. "Will it hurt?" I ask. My voice cracks. She turns to me then, and her eyes are clear, clearer than they have been in weeks. "I do not think so, not anymore." I want to tell her not to go. I want to beg her to stay, to keep drinking tea from my thermos, to keep telling me stories about Daniel and thunderstorms and terrible piano playing. But the words stick behind my ribs because I know she is not choosing this. Not really. Her body has been choosing for weeks now, and today she is simply agreeing. "I brought you something," she says. She reaches into the pocket of her dress and pulls out a small brass key. It glints dull gold in the flat light. She presses it into my palm. The metal is warm from her body. "My apartment," she says. "There is a box on the kitchen table. Inside are letters I wrote to Daniel, one for every birthday he missed." Her fingers close over mine, trapping the key between our hands. "I want you to take them to the lake behind the library, the one where we used to feed ducks. Burn them there." My vision blurs. "Why me?" "Because you listened," she whispers. "Because you are the only one who saw me and did not look away." A sob builds in my throat, but I swallow it down. She needs me to be strong now. She needs me to carry this. "I will," I manage. She nods once, satisfied. Then she leans back against the bench and tilts her face toward the sky. I follow her gaze. The clouds are breaking apart, just barely. Thin streams of sunlight slice through the gray, turning the wet pavement silver. "It was a day like this," she says. "The day he was born, October, cold. But then the sun came out just as they placed him in my arms, and I thought it was a sign." Her voice is steady, almost peaceful. Maybe it was. Maybe it meant he would always be light breaking through. I press the heels of my hands against my eyes. My chest heaves. "He would have liked you," she continues. "He always liked curious children, the ones who asked too many questions. I wish I could have met him." "You did," she says simply. "Every time you sat with me, you kept him alive." The 4 o'clock hour creeps closer. I feel it in the way the light shifts, in the way the air grows colder. Margaret's breathing has changed. It is shallower now, each inhale a visible effort. But her spine stays straight. Her hands stay folded. She is holding herself together through sheer will. "Will you stay?" she asks. "Until it is time?" "Yes." She reaches for my hand. Her fingers are ice cold, the skin papery and thin. I grip tight, trying to push warmth into her, trying to anchor her here for just a little longer. "Thank you," she whispers. We sit in silence. The minutes stretch and compress. A dog barks somewhere distant. A door slams. The world continues indifferent. Then Margaret's grip tightens, her breath catches. She leans forward slightly, her entire body tensing. "Do you feel that?" she asks. "Feel what?" "The air." Her voice is strange now, distant and odd. "It is warmer, like summer." I feel only the October cold, but I do not say that. I squeeze her hand. "He used to smell like cedar," she murmurs. "From the pencils he sharpened. Every day, a whole classroom of pencils." A tear slides down her cheek, but she is smiling. "I can smell it now." My heart hammers against my ribs. Margaret turns to me. Her face is luminous, almost translucent in the fractured sunlight. Her eyes are fixed on something just over my shoulder, something I cannot see. "Today feels different," she whispers. "Different how?" She squeezes my hand so hard it hurts. "Today feels like an ending." Her pupils dilate. Her breathing stutters, then evens into something rhythmic and slow. She is still looking past me, through me, at the empty road where no bus has ever stopped. And then her entire body goes still in a way that is not stillness at all, but anticipation. Waiting. Her breathing changed at 3:57. The rhythm I had memorized over 4 weeks, that shallow rise and fall beneath her cotton dress, hitched once, twice, then settled into something deeper, slower, like she was sinking into water. Her fingers tightened around mine, and I felt every ridge of her knuckles, every tremor of her papery skin. "Margaret!" My voice cracked on her name, but she was not looking at me anymore. Her clouded eyes fixed on the empty road, on the space between the faded yellow lines and the spot where the curb crumbled into weeds. The autumn light slanted low through the bus shelter, turning everything gold and amber, and her face changed. The lines smoothed, the tightness in her jaw released. She smiled. Not the polite, careful smile she had given me when I brought her tea. Not the distant, haunted smile when she spoke of Daniel's childhood. This smile belonged to someone young, someone whole. It reached her eyes and made them bright, and for one impossible moment, I saw the woman she must have been 15 years ago, before the drunk driver crossed the median, before the waiting began. "He finally came back," she whispered. The words were so soft I almost missed them beneath the rustle of leaves skittering across the pavement. But I heard them. I felt them travel through her hand into mine, a current of relief so profound it made my throat close. "Margaret, I don't." Her hand went slack. The weight of it remained in my palm, but the warmth started leaching away, replaced by something cool and final. Her chest stopped moving. The smile stayed frozen on her face, peaceful and certain, and the bus stop shelter felt too small, too cold, too ordinary for what had just happened. I could not breathe. My lungs forgot how. The thermos I had brought lay overturned beside the bench, a dark puddle of tea spreading across the concrete like a stain. I should move. I should do something, call someone. But my hand stayed locked around hers because letting go meant admitting she was gone, and I was 12, and I did not know how to hold death. A car passed on the road. Its engine noise sounded obscene. "Please," I whispered to no one, to her, to the empty air she had been staring at. "Please." But the 4 o'clock bus did not come. It never did. My free hand fumbled for my phone, my mother's number. My fingers shook so hard I dropped it once, twice, finally got it to my ear. The ringing lasted forever. "Sweetheart." My mother's voice was warm, distracted, probably stirring something on the stove. "You're supposed to be home by..." Mom. The word came out broken. Mom, I'm at the bus stop. Something happened. Margaret, she's not breathing. I don't know what to do. Silence. Then a crash, something ceramic shattering. Stay there, do not move. I am calling 911 right now. The line went dead. I sat holding Margaret's hand as the sun crawled lower. Her suitcase rested against her legs, packed with whatever she thought she would need for this journey. The brass key she had given me dug into my pocket, a small, sharp weight. The letters. She wanted me to burn the letters. Sirens started wailing in the distance. I thought about Daniel Hayes, who loved thunderstorms and played piano badly and never made it home for his mother's birthday. I thought about Margaret spending 15 years on this bench, waiting at 3 o'clock every single day, and how everyone said she was crazy. Lost. Too broken to understand reality. But she had understood. She told me herself, I am not waiting for him to arrive. I am waiting for permission to leave. The ambulance turned onto Maple Street, lights flashing red and blue against the autumn trees. My mother's car pulled up right behind it, and she was out before the engines stopped, running toward me with her coat flapping open. Her face was white. Baby, let go. You have to let go of her hand. I could not. My fingers had locked. A paramedic knelt beside me, young with kind eyes. Hey, buddy, you did good staying with her, but we need to check her now, okay? Can you let us do that? My mother pried my fingers open one by one. Margaret's hand slipped away and landed in her lap, pale and still. The paramedic pressed 2 fingers to her throat, then her wrist, then shook his head at his partner. No words needed. My mother pulled me against her chest. I realized I was shaking, full-body tremors that made my teeth chatter. She smelled like home, like laundry detergent and the pasta sauce she had been making, and I pressed my face into her shoulder and tried not to see Margaret's smile still frozen on her face. She said he came back, I choked out. She saw him, she saw Daniel. My mother's arms tightened. I know, baby, I know. Do you think? I could not finish. Could not ask if delusion or love or grace had brought that smile. If Margaret had died believing a lie or witnessing a truth I was too young to perceive. I think, my mother said carefully, her voice thick, that she is not in pain anymore. I think that matters. They lifted Margaret onto a stretcher. Someone draped a white sheet over her, but I glimpsed her hand hanging out, still curved as if holding something precious. Her suitcase sat abandoned on the bench. A police officer picked it up, tagged it with a yellow label, speaking into his radio about next of kin and transport. There is no next of kin, I said. My voice sounded hollow. Just Daniel, and he is dead. The officer looked at me, then at my mother, then nodded slowly. We will handle it, son. But they would not. They did not know about the letters. About the apartment frozen in time, the piano no one played, the photographs watching from every wall. They would clear it out as an estate, impersonal and efficient, and every trace of Daniel that Margaret had kept alive would be boxed and discarded. I touched the key in my pocket. Mom, I said, I have to do something for her. She asked me to. My mother pulled back, studying my face. She looked tired, scared, but also, I realized, not surprised. Like she had been waiting for weeks to understand why her 12-year-old son kept bringing tea to a grieving stranger. Okay, she said finally. Tell me what you need. That night, she drove me to Margaret's apartment. We climbed the stairs in silence, and I unlocked the door with the brass key. The lavender smell hit me first, then the dust, Then the overwhelming presence of Daniel Hayes staring at us from a dozen frames. The letters sat in a shoebox on the piano, hundreds of them, all addressed to Daniel in Margaret's careful handwriting, never sent because there was no address for the dead. I lifted one out. The paper was thin, covered in stories. Recipes he liked, weather reports, small observations about birds at the feeder and how the maple tree was losing its leaves. 15 years of conversation with silence. She loved him so much, my mother whispered, tears sliding down her face. God, she loved him. I packed the shoebox carefully. The next morning, we drove to the lake Margaret had described. The water was gray and still under October clouds. I built a small fire in the stone ring near the shore, and one by one, I fed the letters to the flames. My mother stood beside me, not speaking, just present. The smoke curled up toward the sky, carrying Margaret's words somewhere beyond sight. I thought about waiting and grief and how love does not stop just because the heart does. I thought about a mother who chose ritual over reason, devotion over healing, and how maybe that was not madness at all. Maybe it was the bravest thing I would ever witness. The last letter curled and blackened. The flames died to embers. My mother put her arm around my shoulders, and we stood watching the water until the cold drove us back to the car. At 3:57 the next day, I walked past the Maple Street bus stop. The bench was empty. The shelter cast its crooked shadow across cracked pavement. No one waited there, but I stopped anyway. Stood for one long moment where Margaret had sat for 15 years. The 4 o'clock bus rumbled past without stopping, and I understood finally what she had been doing all along. She had been keeping him alive, and in doing so, she had kept herself tethered to the world just long enough to teach a 12-year-old boy that love, real love, transcends logic and death and time. The bus disappeared around the corner. I turned toward home, carrying that lesson like a weight and a gift, and I did not look back.